Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Evolve Through God. My name is Angela Goodman. I am your host for today. I am so excited today. I have with us Angela Bradford, who is my Angela squared. Angela is an amazing light, an amazing human. She has such an inspiring story. She is so strong and so accomplished and so deep in her faith. And I'm just excited for you all to get to meet her today. So I don't want to waste a bunch of time. Welcome, Angela, to the podcast today.
Oh, excited.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here. I have started Evolve Through God so that it can be a resource for people as they're starting their faith journey, and then also just, to find out how God has presented differently in everyone's life and how the relationships have formed and progressed. So I can't wait for the audience to get to hear about yours. And I would love it if you could kind of start with how your relationship with God started. I know a little bit about this story because we did a similar podcast on One Starfish. So share with us, how did your relationship with God really get started?
Well, when I was 2, I guess is the first time, but I don't really remember that. So we'll go with 3. I just remember my mom talking about, if I didn't become a Christian, I was going to hell. And, I don't know if all of our beliefs have changed since then, but that was at 3, that was the
Wow.
story. And so I was like, I don't want to go to hell. That sounds terrible. So I started bawling, and I just remember saying, Jesus, come into my life, forgive me my sins. And
Wow.
that's when I became a Christian. I was 3 years old and crying
Wow.
on the floor and wherever we were. I don't know if it was the bedroom or the kitchen, where I don't remember that part, but
Yeah.
I just remember that was a very dramatic experience. And then and then I was like, then there was peace, because I was like, perfect, now I'm going to heaven. And I honestly have never doubted that part of my faith ever.
Wow.
And so I think that I've been really blessed. I've gone through a lot of different things, but I've never doubted like where I'm going. I've always known, where that is, and that's never really been shaken, I guess, in all these years.
Wow. That is so amazing to me that that you remember at the age of 3 having that revelation is just incredible to me. I don't think I remember anything from the age of 3. So that's just amazing altogether. So then did your mom and your dad play a pretty big role in you developing your relationship with God?
I would say my mom did. My dad at that time was still finding himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but my mom we went to church. From what I remember at that age and onward, like every Sunday.
Okay.
And that was like, growing up, we were in Bible studies. We were running, VBS for the church.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing violin at a young age in church. We were heavily involved in, basically everything in the Sunday school and community. I was teaching Sunday school as a child. As a child, I was teaching other children.
Wow.
And so we were heavily involved reading the Bible. I memorized quite a few books of the Bible growing up. My favorite book of the Bible was Revelation, still is actually one of my favorite books of the Bible. Memorized it, wrote it out, handwritten, King James
Wow.
Version, really dived into it as a child, which is an interesting book of the Bible to really dig into. We
Well,
read
let's talk about it, because to be honest with
Yeah,
you,
sure.
I'm physically reading the Bible for the first time in my life. I started probably
Cool.
four months ago, and I've been skipping around, and I have
Okay.
not gotten to the book of Revelation yet. And there's probably people on the call who probably have not read the book of Revelation but have heard about it. So I would love it if you would jump into what is it about Revelation that draws you to it so much, and just share your thoughts on it.
This will be back to a little bit of my dark side. But Revelation is the end times, and it tells us what's coming, and it tells us what to watch for. And it's somewhat hard to decipher because it talks in like, oh, riddles is the right word, but like it's not necessarily like straight out this stuff is happening. But like when things happen, you're like, hey, that was there. But it's just like, it's dark. That's what I really think of Revelation. It's dark. There's like all these like there's these forces coming down from heaven, and there's like these bird creatures, and there's like, it's just like, I can't even put it into words, but it's really dark. That's like,
Yeah.
that's my thought of it.
Yeah.
And like saying all this stuff that's going to happen, that's just like wild. And, Armageddon, when the fights come and
Hmm.
like the world almost ends, but then like all the Christians go to heaven. And then, and then at the end, we're in heaven, and there's like gold, and there's like thrones, and there's like amazing, like all you could eat buffets. I don't know how to put it. And then you're there with Christ. And so like all of that, I guess to me, there's just a lot of horses involved, and I was really into horses when I think about it. I think that was part
Okay.
of it. Like there was like fire breathing horses and flying horses and all these, there's a lot of horses in there. Some of them are like creepy horses, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of horses in there. And I think that was part of it. And then just like, it's just really kind of, like I said, it's just kind of creepy. And I guess for me, that was kind of cool. Like it was like all these things were going to happen, and are going to happen. And it's exciting for me, I guess. I guess as a child, it was
Yeah.
exciting for me to
Yeah.
think of all the things that were going to happen. I don't know. Now I read it and I'm like not as intrigued. I'm like, this is really dark. Um,
Yeah.
but as a child, I thought it was really cool, apparently. And I'm not sure if, like you said, this is my dark side, and it's a whole different ball game. But it's probably why I like Revelation. And then we would read Psalms and Proverbs, because
Okay.
you can read 5 books in Psalms and 1 book in Proverbs every day, and you get through the whole both books of the Bible every month. So we would do that. So every month we would
Okay.
read five chapters from Psalms and 1 chapter from Proverbs. I don't remember when we started, but we would do that like all the time. So we did that like months and months. And so, which is cool. I just read Proverbs again. I really like Proverbs. It's like, now I really like Proverbs. It's like the wise person book. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so good to read.
What
Um,
draws you to it the most?
Now, like I said, it's just like so in depth. Like there's so many books that are written based on the Bible, like
Hmm.
personal development books, and Proverbs would be one of the ones that a lot would be taken from, because it's like it's the wisdom book. So
Yeah.
there's just so many things in there of like, wow, if I apply this stuff, things are going to be good.
Yeah. So what have you applied from Proverbs in your own life that you
That's a
can
great question.
take? Yeah. Yeah. What have you applied in your own life, and how has that worked out for you?
Well, I don't know what I've applied, to be honest. I'm sure there's lots, but put on the spot, and my brain is completely blank.
Yeah.
Um, but Proverbs 31 is about the righteous woman that provides for her husband, provides for her family.
Mhm.
And she's kind of an amazing person. She's like looks beautiful, and she's totally like poised and put together, and she like has her own business, and she looks after her family, and she looks after her husband, and she looks after herself, and she's like this like incredible human.
Mhm.
And that's the wife that in the Bible it says that the guy should be looking for. So
Ah.
I'm like, huh, so you got to become this amazing person. And I think that a lot of women are like that, like they're running a business, and they're running their family, and they're doing all of that kind of stuff. So I just think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a good role model to, I guess, live up to.
Yeah. 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 Well, you are extremely accomplished in business and in your personal life, in my opinion. So
Thank you.
yes. Yes, absolutely. So as you started to age and get a little bit older, middle school, high school, early 20s, what is there anything at that time where you feel like maybe you did question your faith a little bit, or maybe you went through a frustrating time with God that you had to figure out how to get yourself back from?
Interesting enough, I would say no. What I did do is I really revamped. We were raised really strict. We were raised really religious. There's a difference between a belief and a religion.
Yeah.
And I have very strong beliefs about that. And so we were raised, while my mom is very much like a Christian in actual beliefs, not just religion, we kind of got sucked into a homeschooling group, I'm going to say, where we got torn into religion.
Mm.
And so we had to wear certain colors. We had to wear a dress. I wasn't allowed to leave home until I got married. Like we took the Bible in some of the verses to a literal while avoiding other verses. That's what happens a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so we were very literal, which is interesting because there's always yin and yang verses. I mean, if you want to play in the Bible and be like, well, the Bible said this, well, also the Bible said this. So like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of interpretation to that. And so we interpreted it very strict. So as I became an adult, I mean, I got baptized I was 12. I wanted to be baptized at 10 because I understood what that meant. But my mom wasn't sure I understood what it meant. So we waited till I was 12. And I got baptized at 12. And then I remember like, I just was really fighting a lot of the rules as a teenager. The whole concept of having to wait till I was married seemed far, far, far away. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things growing up because I was a woman and I, had to like not be around anything male, basically. So I was very sheltered.
Wow.
And so I was fighting the rules. I've never, that I recall, have ever doubted God. I fought the rules. And to me, they were very separate. And always, like when I think about it, and I still think that they're very separate. And so as a teenager, I kind of like planned my run away from home. I ran away from home while my parents were at Bible study, interestingly enough. Left a note, said, I'll let you know where I'm at tonight. And they got home. That was very hard on my mom, obviously, her little baby girl.
Yeah.
But I knew that, that would bring them closer to God and bring them closer together. I didn't really think actually of God, but I knew it would bring them closer together. And it did. But one of the things that I like at that point, I guess, when I turned 18 is I started to question a lot of different things, religiously. So I kind of quit going to church. I think at somewhere in that point, I don't remember exactly. I was kind of going, I kind of went to a church and then I kind of like, and then, I had a Christian guy. I used quotes on this, like put moves on me where I was staying at where I first moved out actually was a Christian home, horse trainer. And I haven't really told this story very often or because, it just is what it is, but he put moves on me and I was very naive and I didn't understand it. And, if I could go back, I would, if I ever met his wife now, like there would be words.
Oh, he was married.
Yes. Married with kids in the home.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah. And I don't remember what happened. I just know I was uncomfortable. I don't remember what degree. It doesn't really even matter. I think some parts of my life I've kind of blacked out, but I feel like it was definitely uncomfortable. And so then I started and he's supposed to be the Christian. We went to church together and we would do this stuff. And I was like, okay, so just because someone says they're Christian does not mean that they follow anything.
Yeah.
So now I realize that Christians are human, just like everyone else, and they all make mistakes and that's okay. And so I think in some ways, when I think of it, that was probably not a good situation for him and his family. But for me, I just grew up a lot, I guess. And I just realized you got to make your own decisions. So I started one of the things that I had made, I was never going to do drugs. I decided that. So I'd made decisions from my childhood that I took into adulthood, and then some things just kind of got questioned. And so one of the things that I didn't believe that I had to do every Sunday was go to church. So I quit doing that all the time. For quite a few years, actually, I quit going to church. And I think that was a time my mom started wondering if I was where my beliefs actually were.
Yeah.
I was going to the bar twice a week, 4 times a week, a million times a week.
Did you have at that time if you can remember, did you have a relationship with God every day? Did you pray? Did you have open discussion with God during that time, maybe where you weren't formally worshiping on Sundays?
It wasn't formally like now I pray on my knees every night pretty much. But for instance, I definitely wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
But I just knew he was there.
Yeah.
I've always just known he was there. I've never really had, I have a very informal, I've always had a very, we prayed before this podcast. I have a very informal relationship. I'm just hey, help me. But I'm not oh, Father God, nothing wrong with that. That's just never been me. And so, in that time, I don't remember that there was anything specific, but I do know that I've never not thought he's there. I don't know if that's ever I just know he's always there.
Yeah.
And so, just like my father, I know my Heavenly Father is available whenever I need him. And so I don't talk to him every day necessarily, just like I don't talk to my father every day, but it doesn't mean that I'm not any less connected. Yes. So I think that was at that time, it was for me, it wasn't a conscious, not or talk. It was just just kind of was what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I have never been and I'm actually looking for a church to attend now, but I've never been a person who has worshipped on Sundays. It wasn't something that was a part of my growing up. I didn't really, we talked very briefly before, but I didn't really have a, relationship with God. Say, I knew he was there, but never really had a relationship with him until my late 30s. And so I want to get into worship, and I want to go and find a community to worship with. But I agree, like, you don't have to formally worship on Sundays to have a relationship with God. And I think that's important for the people who are listening that maybe don't worship, right? That you don't have to feel guilty about that. It is something he wants you to do, but you don't have to do it to have a relationship.
It doesn't have to be on Sunday. Like, I know my church now has and I think they still have it. They have a Thursday third service for the people that, work on Sundays. Then they can go on Thursday. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be on any set day either. And so I did find a church. I remember at one point that I started to go to, and I just felt they weren't judgmental. Like the other one, if I missed a Sunday, I was like, where were you? How dare you?
Yeah.
And then this one was more like, oh, you just had, oh, that's awesome. And I was like, wow, they actually don't care if I miss Sunday. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I remember going to that church for a while. Interesting enough, that pastor went out and cheated on his wife that I really looked up to.
Oh my gosh.
And there was a whole, but that was after I was out of the church. But that's the thing. I mean, and here's something for you, like, and I think a lot of people, because a lot of people listen to this that maybe are questioning all this stuff. And a lot of times, like, people are like, well, how can this be when these pastors are doing all these evil things? And I would say some pastors are doing more evil, quote unquote, things than normal people. I want you to think, if you were the devil, who would you tempt the most? Would you tempt the leader of the flock, or would you tempt the sheep? You're going to tempt the leader of the flock.
Yeah.
So if you know someone that's in leadership in anything, they're being tempted more than everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So we got to give them grace. Completely. I say that because I'm in an amazing church now. And I say that to my pastor. I'm like, hey, just praying for you. Because I know he's a very charismatic leader, and I just know that I mean, I don't know the temptation, but I know that he's a lot more temptation than everyone else in the church.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's a great point that people often don't think about. Such a great point. Such a great point. I think I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that hasn't been stated yet. And I agree with it 100%.
Yeah. And that's why, like, sometimes then the pastor gets taken out. People are like, oh my gosh, my pastor cheated, or, maybe it was like they committed fraud because they have like money available, like whatever it is, something happened. And then there's these huge hooplas on these pastors, and then the whole church goes crazy. Well, the church needs to be solid. The people need to be solid without, like, their pastor.
Yeah.
Like, they need to figure this out. The pastor it's just a person.
Yeah.
And he's getting tempted more than most. And why not? The devil's going to try to take out the pastor, because if he does take out the pastor, he knows he can take out a bunch of the flock.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, of course. So when that happens, like, to me, if I was in that church, if you're in a church like that or whatever it is, you need to become stronger, because you know that your church is being tested.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, perfect. We took out the pastor. Now someone needs to step up and be that leader.
Yeah. And to your point, right? Our goal as Christians is to be non-judgmental of other people. That's not our place, right? We are yes, we are given the rules and the doctrine and God's word of how he would like us to live our lives, but it's not our place to judge what anyone else does. And to your point, not only if people who are in religious or spiritual authority get tempted in that way, that's the enemy winning once it gets put out in the media. Because then people say, oh, well, see, this is why I don't go to church, or this is why I don't believe in God.
Exactly.
Or this is why, right? So it has even bigger implications, not even just of the flock at that church, but also then people who were on the fence,
That's right.
and were unsure.
So if you're listening to this and you're actually have solid beliefs, you need to pray for your leaders, because they're getting tempted way more than you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, so that happened to you at a fairly young age. I know that, and you've been very vocal about your health diagnosis, that you were diagnosed with MS. And Talk to us a little bit about when you have those types of challenges in your life, how you handle those, how you're able to see God through them. And tell us a little bit
Hmm.
about your story for those who are listening that don't
Sure.
know.
Sure. And I think that's, yeah, it's a good thing because I feel like a lot of times people are like, if God is so great and God is so big, how can good things happen? How can bad things happen to good people?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, I go back to the book of Job where like he was extremely tested. And all he had to do was renounce God and die. And he's like, I
Mm-hmm.
will not, I will never. And once again, I believe challenges are given to people. I shouldn't say even given, they're allowed. I just picture, like I said, for me, I'm blessed. I have an amazing father. He sins, he's done bad things, whatever, but he's an amazing dad. And so for an example, I have that. And for people that don't have that, this is a harder concept. So if you're in a different boat and you've had a very bad dad, I'm really sorry. I've had a really good dad. And so I picture God like my father. And he can't stop things from happening. I mean, he can, but he doesn't stop things from happening for me or to me. Just like my earthly father can't stop things. Neither my heavenly father chooses not to stop things and allows me to have free will and to make my own choices. And things happen because of sometimes the choices that I make. And so in my world, I just believe that MS was something that was, I was allowed to have to be able to grow in my relationship, definitely with God, because there's days I'm not strong on my own, and I really have to rely on a higher power, which in this
Yeah.
case, of course, is
Yeah.
God, and I really have to do. I mean, I talked to him a lot about it, and I think that that's like a key. And I think sometimes like, and I'm not, whatever, this is my beliefs. Like a lot of times people are like, well, kids get stuff. What have they done to deserve that? They haven't done anything to deserve that. Some things just things happen, but you never know when even those things that happen cause something else to happen that can
Yeah.
completely change a life.
Yeah.
And so I just think the hardest times that people are going through or your families are going through, whatever, just can be catalyst to extreme change
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
you or for whoever else.
I being on the outside and knowing you and seeing your life and then also getting to spend time with you. So then getting to see the physical struggles at some degree that you deal with on a daily basis. Um, I go back to your analogy of temptation in that God knows how strong your faith is and how strong the relationship is that you have with Him. Your MS is a gift for other people.
Mhm.
He provided that to you as a gift because he knew that that would also allow you to share your faith and his light through the challenges that you have.
Definitely.
And I can't imagine the challenges that you have, the struggle you have, the all of that. You posted the other day on social media, when was the last time you were thankful for your body? And in that moment, I was like, she's 100% right. How many of us every day take for granted the simple act of walking without thought or pain or any kind of uncomfortableness? And so, you even just sharing that, right? Look at how much a gift that you gave to the people who read that post to say, you know what, Angela, you're right. I need to be grateful. I need to be thankful. I need to understand that I have my health, and so I should be grateful. So you're a warrior for him for sure in that way, reminding people to be grateful for what he has given them. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. So, as you look upon kind of where you are in life, you're so accomplished in business also, and you kind of designed your life to be free so that you could travel as you like and be in a place where your body feels its best. Um, Talk about kind of what that looks like. How did God provides, but God also wants you to do action, right? So so
Right.
so talk about what that's been like for you, your kind of your journey, your process in doing the actions for God so that you can get to your potential.
Well, interesting enough, like when I started in doing what I'm doing in financial services, it was a brick and mortar business. And so I felt like God had called me. I got introduced to this opportunity and I was like, okay, it is what it is. And then I felt like God called me to like really step into it, which was not something I really wanted to do because I didn't really want to work in an office, and not be on the highway and not have that quote freedom of trucking that I used to do. But I felt like I was supposed to give up my life basically in order to help others achieve theirs, which is something that I know our Heavenly Father did dramatically by coming to earth and give up his life in heaven to come to earth to save us. And so I was like, okay, I have to give this up. And so I did. The cool thing is that, a few short years later, the world changed and we went from, brick and mortar to online. And all of a sudden my life went from living in an office, which I felt like I was okay with and I was gonna, suffer, quote, suffer through and deal with. And I wasn't feeling like I was suffering, but like it just wasn't my dream life when I was younger. But I was like, it is what it is, and making it happen. And then all of a sudden we were able to actually like live on a beach. And I was like, wow, like, so sometimes we give up things, quote unquote, give up things. And then God gives us back in like tenfold. And that's actually what happened with Job. Like when he was given everything back, it was like way better than he ever had even before. Everything was taken away from him. So I do think that that's something sometimes we have to, and we can't give up in order to get more. Be like, you know what, I'm giving this in order to get some more. But like, I remember the one, and this is a little different, but I remember I was giving to the church and I was like, oh, I need to, I'm like I said, I'm not a stickler for rules, whatever people believe on tithes. I'm not like that. I'm not percentage. I'm just like, let's just give. So I was like, oh, I need to give. And I was like, it was a tight month. And I was like, I don't want to give. I was like, you need to give. And then it was funny because I went to give and I put an extra zero accidentally. So not only did I give what I meant to give, but like thousands more. And I was like, 10 times
the amount.
And I was like, oh crap. And then I like called the credit card company. It's kind of funny. And I'm like, can I put a stop on this? Like, this is a lot more than I was planning on giving. And then they're like, well, no, but you can call your, like, because they knew it was church, whatever. They can call the church and they can like, I'm sure. I'm like, I feel like this is weird to call God and be like, hey, God, we need to like take some of the money back. Can I have my money back? So I went ahead and gave, but interesting enough, like within the next like couple of weeks, like I said, you can't give this. This is not why you give, or this will not happen. But like within a couple of weeks, I had all these like random clients that came in and we tripled our income. We tripled what we gave.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, it was like, or 10 times, I don't remember. It was crazy. And I was like, wow. So that's what happens. So like, sometimes we just have to like trust that whatever we're going through, whatever happening, there's always a bigger purpose. And that God has full control. And like I said, you can't give to get. That does not work that way.
Right.
But that will not work. I've tried that. It did not work. I've tried that. Wait, trust me. I'm like, what if I do this? And they're like, no, that didn't work. But we have to like, and I might have got the story a little bit, but I know there was like, I didn't feel like giving, and I got a whole bunch back. But there's like times in our life when we're really tested and God always comes through. I guess that's the main thing.
Yeah.
If we just trust.
Yeah. Yeah. You just have to trust. I love that. I am. So these episodes are a little shorter. They're 35 to 45 minutes. So we're nearing the time where it's question and answer time. Okay. So do you have anything else before we go into question and answer time that you'd like to offer up about your life?
Q&A. This sounds fun.
I know. Isn't that great? All right. So the first question is a means of helping our listenership if they're looking for a way to read or listen to something that was impactful to you. So what have you read and or listened to other than the Bible that you felt has drawn you closer to God?
My favorite book, and I read it every New Year's, which is coming up, is The Circle Maker. It's by Pastor Mark Batterson. It's on the power of prayer. Highly, highly, highly recommended. Changed my view in 2020 and changes it every time I read it. So it's Circle Maker by Pastor Mark Batterson.
Love it.
The book.
So good. So good. Such a I love the fast answers. All right. So when you are in prayer, when you are having a struggle with something that you're, working through with God, and you're connected to the Spirit, do you have a physical manifestation that you feel? What is the feeling of being in connection, in relationship with God?
Peace.
Yeah.
Just that, he's got it.
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
get emotional, like he's just got it.
Yeah.
Everything's taken care of. Everything will happen when it's meant to happen. And I just have to trust.
I love that. I love that. All right. And lastly, you're so fast at questions. We have more talk time after this. All right.
I'm
So
fast.
you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in the conversation, but I'm going to ask the question again. So as you are older and a little more wiser now, and have had a little bit more years under your belt,
I don't know about that.
you are. You are. Is there anything that you would have offered yourself in those early years that would have helped you along the way? Like, what would you tell?
Specifically?
Yeah, what would you tell Angela of the experience with that pastor gentleman? What would you tell the Angela that was challenged when you were going through, some of the other challenges that you've had in life?
To quit running faster.
Mm.
I know for a long time it was like I was scared what God would want me to do. And I remember being like, if he wants me to go to Africa, do I want to go to Africa? I'm like, I don't want to go to Africa. And I had like thoughts like that. I'd be in church. They're like, are you willing to give up your cross and follow? Like, I went to revivals, all these things growing up. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for all that. I'm like, so I was resistant to the idea of really stepping into what God wanted for me. And it was the MS and reading that book that changed, and that's where I like really realized my name is Angela, which is yours. And God, it means God's messenger. And that was why I was called it. It happened to be the meaning of my name. Mom and dad wanted me to be God's messenger. So I was a miracle child. And so right from the get-go, that was what mom and dad saw for me, I guess, or whoever, maybe my mom named me, I don't know, whatever the combination there. And so finally stepping into it and being like, okay, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. And, there's times now I've been in church and I'm like, I used to be scared of going to Africa. I think Africa would be easier than some of the things I feel like I'm dealing with now. So like, that'd have been easier. Maybe I should have taken that one up when I was younger. But yeah, just not run. God got to look after you. Whatever you feel called to do, you need to do it.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's why we're on this podcast, because I had that happen to me about a month and a half ago, and I was like, okay. I always said nobody wanted to listen to me, but I guess we'll do that. So here we are.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us today. Do you have anything else that you'd like to offer up to the listenership before we close out?
Yeah, I think you just need to know that God is love. Something my mom is still working on after all these years. And I admire her for it. But just like, no matter what you do, or no matter like what you're doing, and it's something I have always felt, and I think a lot of Christians fight with, that they do things like, I was drinking when I was, younger. And I think there are things maybe we aren't supposed to do. Just like my earthly father probably wouldn't like if I did some of the things. My heavenly father probably doesn't like if I do some of the things. That doesn't mean he loves us less. So, even if you went out there and committed murder, even if you went out there and committed adultery, or whatever all those things quote mean, and some of us that are raised in very strict religious communities believe this stuff like makes us bad. It just makes you a sinner saved by grace. Everyone sins, and it's no one's better than someone else just because their sin isn't quote as bad. It's still a sin. And so if we think it, we sin. So like pretty much everyone's guilty.
Yeah.
So, or like, I think everyone's guilty. I'll leave it.
I agree.
So I think just knowing that no matter what you've done or are doing or who you are, that is that doesn't negate what God feels for you. He loves you no matter who you are or what you've done, 100% with no takebacks. And that's really hard for a lot of people to understand, because most of the people in our life love us conditionally.
Yes.
And God loves us unconditionally, completely unconditionally.
Yes.
And so if you're listening to this, I want you to know that, and it might take you a while to really understand that, but it's true. And I want you to really understand that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad you shared that. And it's so true. It's so true. And a very hard concept to grasp sometimes as humans. Yeah.
We're not used to that.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, Angela, thank you so much for coming on and joining us today. It has been such a pleasure, as always. I absolutely love you with my whole big heart, and I'm so grateful that we got the opportunity to meet a few years ago. And just thank you. Thank you for coming on today, and all that peace. I want all that peace for you.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us today. And you can find Angela online on her social media accounts as well. They'll be tagged as a part of the broadcast today. So hope everybody has a great day, and we'll see you next week.